6:30 Once again, we say a very good morning to you. Welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. This morning, we are looking at the future of the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project. This, of course, after Sanral's new board last week indefinitely postponed the implementation of this unpopular project, and this was for a third time. We are scheduled to talk to the DG of the Department of Transport, as well as an economist in as far as these matters are concerned. But let me quickly welcome here in the studio Mr. Patrick Craven. He speaks on behalf of COSATU. Mr. Craven, good to have you in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to your listeners.
And thank you very much for your time. We will be going to the DG in a minute. But let me just start with the demands that are being made by COSATU in as far as this project is concerned.
We want to see the tolls scrapped altogether. We believe that our highways are a public asset which should be funded from general taxation, which is a much fairer way of raising money than these tolls, because taxation is graded so that the more you earn, the more you pay. These tolls would have been completely undiscriminating, so the poor worker who has to use his car to get to work would pay exactly the same as a company director. And it would impose a huge burden on those workers in particular and motorists in general. And we were also very concerned about the knock-on effect on prices in the shops because of the extra cost of transporting goods from producers to wholesalers to retailers, which would be enormous given the number of times that the trucks would go through these gantries. And inevitably the extra cost would be passed on to the consumer. And linked to that, we're also demanding that we need a far better public transport system before we can even think about charging people to travel on roads, because so many people simply have no alternative.
Let's talk a little bit about this taxation. Are you talking here about a once-off special taxation regime, perhaps, or are you talking about an increment in already what we're paying? What have you got in mind?
Well, we haven't worked it out in detail, but there's nothing unusual about this, because we've been paying taxes to fund road improvements for years. It's one of the basic things that if you ask what do we pay taxes for, roads is one of them. And that's why we're very much opposed to what we've called the commodification of public services. So they're treated as a kind of business. And some people indeed are going to make a lot of money if these tolls go ahead. The companies administering them. And we're saying that's wrong. These should be regarded as part of our public infrastructure, which obviously have to be paid for, but should be paid for by society as a whole, and not on the basis of user pays, which is fundamentally unfair.
But let's talk about Gauteng in particular, because you are driving around and you know the freeways much better than they were about 2 years or 3 years ago, which obviously implies that there was a specific concerted effort to improve these, a specific investment that was done in order to improve these highways.
But we expect the government to improve the roads. This shouldn't be regarded as some special favour to the motorist. That's what we pay taxes for. And we would certainly complain if we hadn't seen this improvement. What we're objecting to is this particular way of paying for them.
Ideally, you are right, but the issue is that the resources, and I think government has come out very publicly to say, well, yes, we would like to improve, but resources are a problem. We do not have as much money as we would like to have in order to improve all the highways of this country. Therefore, we then saying to people they must chip in.
But people are chipping in. They're already paying taxes. In particular, there's a levy on fuel, which ought to be used precisely for these sort of improvements. And if more taxes have to be raised to pay this off, well, that's something we would look at. That would be a much fairer way of doing it than this system of charging the motorists, which also, by the way, is an incredibly inefficient way of raising money. A huge bureaucracy is being set up, and massive numbers of notices are going to have to be sent out telling people how much they owe. And we believe, in fact, it was probably going to be completely unworkable. And that may be one of the reasons why
that's not what the users are thinking. If we were to take what Sanral just told us about a week or so ago, that over 200,000 people already have bought their tags. The users believe in the system.
I don't believe so. First of all, that is actually only about a fifth. And we understand that a lot of that 200,000 or so are bulk purchases by big companies. I've heard of at least one bank, which has actually employed 15 new people to administer their fleet. And if you I've heard one estimate that the number of ordinary individuals who've bought these tags is only about 20,000, which is negligible. And I believe the overwhelming majority of people are refusing to buy the tags, and many of them have said quite clearly they're going to refuse to pay the tolls, and that is something which we will support and encourage.
All right. Let's get a view from Harold Pakendorf. He's an economist and he joins us on the line. Mr. Pakendorf, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Craven here with me argues that instead of charging us through the e-tolling system, why doesn't the government just charge us through taxes, normal taxes, and pay for the improvement of the highways?
Well, I don't think we should raise taxes any more than they're up anyway, but there is a fuel levy which we can use, which is being overused, by the way, anyway. I heard Mr. Craven saying that the 200,000 people who supposedly have registered are mostly from big companies, and that's true. I've heard exactly the same. Companies go out and buy in bulk the e-tax, and some companies are going to their employees and saying, we'll give you an extra 500 Rand or even 1,000 Rand a month, which obviously will be taxed upon, but you must then pay your toll fees from this increase in payment. I mean, it really is quite ridiculous. And the other very important point made was it cost 20 billion Rand to build to get as far as we are now. But this is not the end of the cost. We have to maintain all those institutions who have this huge bureaucracy which has been referred to, which I'm sure has already been employed, and the question must be asked, what will happen to these poor people in this time of complete uncertainty?
What do you think will happen?
I think they'll have to lay these people off, and it'll cost a lot of money, because in the end, I can't see that this will go through. The public outcry is just too huge. And let me add something else. What Sanral has done is got COSATU, the business community, the DA, all on the same side, and the general public. It's one of the few times, except for the World Cup, Soccer Cup, and the Rugby Cup, that we actually all stood together, and for that they must be praised.
All right. Well, talking about Sanral, I must just point out that we tried everything possible to get them on the program. At one point, they agreed, but unfortunately, by yesterday, they weren't even answering their calls, so we're not sure what's going on in as far as they're concerned. Just economically, though, Mr. Pakendorf, is this precedented? Has it ever happened anywhere else in the world?
No, that's a very broad question, and I can't pretend to know that it's happened anywhere else. But you see, let's go slightly beyond the economy on this issue. The reason why people got so hot up is not only because it's expensive, but because they were caught by surprise. They were driving along what used to be called the freeway, and clearly is no longer a freeway. And suddenly these strange structures appeared next to them. Nobody knew what they were for. And then we were told, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to be told, and this is how much going to be costing. And the questions which arose immediately was, who took the decision? Who should carry the responsibility? And why has this just been sprung upon us? And that's where the real problem lies, not the other questions. The fact is, if you want to talk about the economy, then Sanral does owe 20 billion Rand, and the money has to be found somewhere. The minister who now backtracks suddenly and says, no, this is really awful for the motorists, and he had a different view last year in August, and just says, no, it's got nothing to do with him, but it has everything to do with him. It's his department at the end of the day, one would think, would have to approve such a massive project. And if it wasn't, then the question arises, how did Sanral carry on and just do it? And I'm afraid that it is these things which have to be looked at. In the end, as the ministers indicated, the Treasury may very well have to pay the 20 billion, and it's not as if it all has to be paid by tomorrow. It's a 20 billion Rand over a period.
But again, you mentioned the issue of maintenance, that it's not just the 20 billion, but it's also the money that will have to be found in order to maintain these gantries.
Absolutely. And for how long? And the other question is, will we find a compromise and we pay much less, not enough for Sanral to repay their bond, but the Treasury gets in assists, or the gantries all removed?
Is that what you're demanding, Mr. Craven, that the gantries be removed altogether?
Well, unless some other use can be found for them, which Possibly it may be the case, but that isn't the main issue. What we want to do is to establish a precedent that, particularly in urban areas where people commute on a daily basis, we should not have these kind of tolls. And interestingly, the government itself has more or less conceded that argument when they announced that they were going to halt future similar tolling projects in other provinces. And this is another thing that I think has made Gauteng people particularly angry. They're saying, well, it's discrimination. If you've agreed that they shouldn't go ahead in other provinces, why are you insisting that they should still go ahead in this province? And I think the government has got the message. Incidentally, it has raised some issues in other areas which have existing tolls, which are different in the sense that they're intercity rather than within cities. But in some local communities in Mpumalanga and Northwest, existing tolls have a very disruptive effect on community life. People to get from one part of the community to another have to either drive through these very expensive toll gates, or they have to take back roads which are in a very, very bad condition. And so I think we should move towards the abolition of tolling altogether, but certainly oppose any extension, including this one in Gauteng.
All right. You know what we'll do? We'll open the lines here on 0891 104 208. We were promised that perhaps the DG of Transport, George Matlalela, will join us this morning. Unfortunately, we don't seem to be getting through at the moment. If and when we are able to, we'll certainly be talking to him about what is the view, what is happening within the Department of Transport, because again, as my guests have pointed out this morning, there seems to be towing and froing. One day this is the position, the next day this is the other position. What are your thoughts then? 0891 104 208, 0891 104 208, and I'll also be taking your SMSs at 34701, 34701. Let me just tell you what people, or some people, have been saying on SMS this time. Somebody says, the taxes and levies have been paid year after year, but the money is fiddled away. That's Peter Onrus. There is another one that says, there is no need to expand highways. Provide decent public transport and stop the obsession with building highways. Then you will see cars off the roads. TM in Joburg. JPE says, Craven knew that this toll system must be paid for. Public transport should be exempt and the fees lowered. How much does the fuel levy add to the fiscus? How would you respond?
To throw in two things here while we're waiting for calls,
if
I may.
Sure.
One is there must be a serious question about the administrative ability at Sanral. If we look at what happened at the Auditor General's report, which was published earlier this week, it shows up huge lack of administrative ability across all government departments. On what grounds do we believe that Sanral can actually properly administer all the paperwork that has to do with people being told and those who refuse to pay, what will happen to them? Will they simply be taken to court? Those questions have not been addressed at all. And the other one, which I haven't done the sums, but according to a Business Day a couple of days ago, Sanral did a study and said that in Gauteng, because of if the tolls were to be applied, the demand for roads would decrease by about 6%. 6%. Is that enough? Is that enough of a decrease to spend 20 billion rand and an ongoing cost for who knows how long?
Interesting. All right. I believe that Mr. George Matlalela, DG Transport, is on the line now. Mr. Matlalela, good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Matlalela. Firstly, let me just get a position from the Department of Transport in relation to these tolling systems at the moment. What is the position?
Well, the position is that, as we announced, that the board is going to be looking at options of dealing with this matter, and then after that they will then submit it to the minister, and the minister will make recommendations to cabinet. So they are looking at different options of how we can try and ameliorate the challenges. I mean, as people are saying that this thing is going to affect them deeply.
All right, but does that mean that the tolling system is completely out of the picture now?
No, it doesn't mean the tolling system as a funding option is out of the picture. What it says is that we are looking at the ways of how we can address this without necessarily abandoning or not addressing the debt we have as a country.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Masale?
Okay.
I hear what you're saying, and you're almost quoting the minister saying it's a very heavy burden for motorists. But when did the Department of Transport find out that it is a heavy burden for the motorists? Surely this must have been in the forefront of your thinking when you agreed, and I assume you agreed that Sanral can go ahead.
Yes, there was a cabinet decision for Sanral to go ahead, and as you know, I mean, this project was a recommendation from the Gauteng government, and they took it to national government. There were discussions between the two institutions, and subsequent to that, there was a decision. So yeah, we are not saying that there was no decision. There were no studies which were done. They were done. All of those things were addressed. But there is always a problem with urban tolling, okay? Because people are affected on a daily basis.
So when cabinet made the decision, they hadn't considered the impact of urban tolling on people.
No, they did consider that. They did consider that, but the extent of the impact. Obviously, you look, and I think the issue here is that all of us are learning from this experience, because I mean, tolling has been happening in South Africa and so on. There's a different approach to tolling in general and urban tolling, because you need to have a much more intensive engagement with a whole range of stakeholders. And that doesn't mean that there was no engagement in this case, but a different type of engagement, because now we were dealing with people from Alexandra affected on a daily basis, Soweto and Sentin and so on. So it suggests that as we move forward, we need to approach these things quite differently from how we...
Sure. But the issue again, Mr. Masalele, is that whether you reduce the fee from 40 cents to even 20 cents, people from Alex who are not working will still be affected.
Of course, that's what we're saying. You remember the initial proposal which we talked to Cabinet in July. We were basically a zero rating, the poor through the zero rating of public transport. And precisely we were trying to address that particular question.
But the issue is whether you zero rate public transport, food will be affected because the suppliers will go through and they will charge that through basic foodstuffs.
Those are the kinds of issues we're saying. Let's relook at that.
In other words, though, Mr. Mahlalela, to be blunt about this, cabinet made a wrong decision.
Well, we can't say that. Cabinet took a decision based on the analysis and the feasibilities and all of those things which were available. But an infrastructure project, it takes a long time. A number of new developments which take place. That's unfortunately the situation.
Let me ask you this, though. Mr. Craven is raising the issue of taxation. That through normal taxation, go pay for the Gauteng Freeway project. Why not do that?
Look, this Gauteng Freeway improvement project is not only the road infrastructure project in South Africa. It's not only an infrastructure project in general. The country requires billions and billions of rands for infrastructure. Our tax base can't absorb all of the demands. That's the reality of the situation. We want to improve our power stations. We have 700,000 kilometers of roads. All of them require construction and maintenance and so on. The fact of the matter is that we have to find different ways of addressing this infrastructure backlog in South Africa, and we can't rely on the tax base alone. Otherwise, we are going to take longer for us to address the infrastructure backlog.
Motorists are also taxpayers. I don't understand this argument saying, well, the taxpayers can't afford it, so the motorists must pay. The motorists pay taxes as well, and they quite reasonably expect that those taxes should pay to keep our roads in good order and to improve them when necessary. And that's the basic problem. And it's clear that this wasn't sufficiently looked into when the original decision was taken, the economic impact on the lives of ordinary people. And I believe that taxation is still a fairer way of doing it, because at least it is progressive.
Okay.